This week's episode of My Hero Academia takes us on a journey I didn't know I wanted to see, but after seeing it, I'm very glad we just witnessed it. I mean, you literally have the most wild group of kids that just pushes all the buttons on why Brandon dislikes kids, but created one of the best tests you could probably give to these students. As pretty much it all boils down to them either being too self-indulgent, as if they're saying, hey, I gotta have these pointless rivalries and conflicts in the middle of a battlefield and in the test, or I don't take into consideration the well-being of others. This is the perfect test for how these students failed, but holy shit was it hair-pulling to see what these kids were doing, and how you have these kids who think they are stronger than pro heroes. This is amazing, it's insanity, and I can't wait to see what they're gonna do with next week's episode. Now that kind of the cat's out of the bag, and it seems like they're gonna have a little rumble here with power on power action, but unless you want to fail again, they better do something a little differently, because I doubt just pummeling them to death, or near death, because they're kids and I doubt they're gonna go that far, would be acceptable, but still, I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. I mean, you get all that with Todoroki, Bakugo. You kind of get some sides of course, with the other schools. Kami was a big part of this episode as well, which I thought her addition was quite fun and cute. Especially because they kind of reintroduced what kind of happened in prior seasons, kind of giving you a quick refresher on why the students failed, or what students were basically manipulated to make it look like they were the hero when really they were the villain. So it's nice to kind of get that refresher without actually dropping minutes upon minutes of, hey, this is what happened in prior episodes. So I did appreciate that, and it was just a very fun episode overall. I wasn't necessarily hyping this episode up. I was excited for more. Todoroki is one of my favorite characters in My Hero Academia, so I was, of course, excited to see his redemption arc here for his license exam, but still, it didn't really feel like this was going to be okay, we just came off of Overhaul, right? So, it's not going to be anything like that, and of course, it's not anything like that. But the fact that they're going in such a unique direction for their tests, it kind of makes it feel just so different than anything we're probably predicting. And in return, it makes it feel like a fresh and exciting arc, as you also have the whole All Might and Endeavor situation up top, and kind of setting up the motion for Endeavor's arc in the future, which I have to say is a really interesting concept, because kind of similar to what Deku is trying to do himself, trying to live up to All Might's legacy. Endeavor kind of has to do the same thing, because now he's the number one hero, but all the media, what the people look at him and say, it's he's not All Might, and he's not All Might. Personality-wise, they are night and day, and clearly All Might is a better person, but still, in terms of you're locking up more criminals than ever before, but still, it's almost like the symbol is crumbling before the eyes of the people, and what the hell can you do, right? And I think that's a really interesting way to start the motions, to say, this is clearly going to be an important plotline, and how is he going to evolve as a character to kind of fill the role in his own way, because similar to what All Might says to Endeavor, it kind of goes to Deku as well. Just because All Might was one type of hero doesn't mean everyone has to be the same type of hero, and All Might was very far from perfect. I mean, look at everything that he tossed away, from his sidekick to just people in general, because he believed he had to keep smiling, and yes, he did save a lot of people, but was he a flawless hero? Absolutely not. And I like how they definitely are setting up the motions for things to start changing. And even though, yes, things have been changing, I mean, All Might fell from grace, he no longer is the number one hero. Of course, a lot of things have changed, but it still feels like All Might is still that legacy, that statue that's been there for thousands of years. But the pieces are starting to crumble more and more, and in return, you're seeing the foundation of this world completely shift. We've seen a lot of that shift on the villain side, but it's nice to see that shift on the hero side as well. And I'm really excited for Endeavor's arc, I have to say. But in terms of this episode, which was its kind of core theme, it was the redemption kind of training arc here for all of the heroes that failed. And I laughed, I had fun, and there was pretty much no action. But holy shit, did it feel like we were watching action scenes. Just watching these brats just in every which way push the buttons, and feel like every time you think okay, we can't hit the kids, but then Bakugo would pop up, be like, are you sure we can't hit the kids? And you're like, well, maybe we can if they keep this up. I just love that kind of back and forth, and how everyone was pretty much going insane by the end. I mean, Gamey was kind of the only one who was still grounded the entire time, and how you had the girls who were getting just very much venomous looks towards her, because the boys obviously were attracted, oh, big-chested teenage girl, okay, that's what we're going to, latch onto. And then the little girls are being like, okay, this bitch has to die. I like kind of just seeing that like super innocence there, but like applied to superhero kids, and that's kind of the most frightening thing in existence. It was nice just seeing how they were all had like their own ideas on how to counter it, and nothing was working. I mean, Bakugo, for all of his flaws, I mean, sometimes he does have a point, and you gotta take out the head snake. Cut off the head of one snake, and the rest will kind of slither away. And you got this like one little kid who's just like Blondie, just kind of chilling, making remarks left and right, and is just setting the motion for these kids to run wild. I mean, the poor teacher is literally crying. She's like apologizing that they have to deal with her mess, but these are the most troubled students in existence. I'm definitely curious to see what they're going to do with this exam, whether they'll fail this and have to take yet another one, or if they'll actually be able to mend these very broken kids' hearts, because they have no faith in heroes, and they definitely feel like they are the heroes themselves, and that is a dangerous thing. I mean, you can just think of kids in general, think of your own past. We all were little shits back in the day, even if we were better kids than others. There still were those times where we were monsters, but applying that to actual powerful kids who could throw a fireball or blow up something, right? That is devastating, and to make that their opponent, not just some like giant whale or things like that, is the most optimal way, especially considering what they failed and the reasons for failing, which pretty much all boils down to not focusing in on the scenes at hand and protecting the people, and even if you hate the people, it is still your duty to protect them. And I love that. I mean, this episode, it felt so different than anything we've seen this season. Like last week obviously was a very different feeling episode as well, but to just have a license exam all relate to these kids and just how it felt so classic My Hero Academia, as if a lot of like the season 1 to season 2 comedy, it was present left and right. Like obviously the series has evolved with more complex character arcs and plot arcs overall, but you just had that like basicness of just standing in basically a gym and just having such ridiculous shenanigans take place, not really realizing that there's a darker theme in the background. Of course we know that, but in those earlier seasons before really the hero killer, it was hard to imagine how crazy the series would become, and that's almost how this kind of feels like. We obviously can now piece together where it can go in the future because we have a good understanding of the League of Villains and things like that, but still, it's nice to see how it kind of went back to its roots, and in doing so, created one of the most pure My Hero Academia episodes in recent memory. I mean, I was having a blast, and anytime an anime episode can make an episode filled with children I dislike, I do not like kids, but make me say I am glad they were a part of this episode, they did their due diligence. I mean, this episode, I don't know what manga readers thought of like this arc in terms of the license exam in the manga, but for me, I thought this was incredible, and I'm really glad it didn't just wrap up in this episode, it's carrying on into next week's episode, and I don't know how long it's going to last for sure. I know people are humming and hawing on whether the Endeavor arc is going to be in this season or not. Some people saying it will be, some people saying it won't be, some people saying if it is in this arc, it's going to be rushed. Other people saying no, it won't be rushed. All I know is that I'm getting an Endeavor arc at some point, whether it be this season or next season. I'm excited to see what's going to happen because I think it sounds pretty damn interesting. But for the time being, focusing in on the characters that we've come to know and love, some characters maybe we are indifferent to, maybe dislike, really kind of put into a spotlight, not really being held down by Deku or one of the other main characters, but giving other characters the chance to shine and really kind of regain their composure, I think is going to be fun. This episode was just pure classic My Hero Academia, no filters, just absurd reactions, outbursts left and right, while also doing probably one of the most unique tests you could probably give a superhero. It sounds so basic, just a bunch of kids, but I mean, that's kind of what a hero who failed their license exam probably needs, to interact with the worst type of kids, and who knows, maybe they'll be able to set their hearts in a more positive direction, or maybe they'll completely crumble and burn. One of the biggest strengths My Hero Academia has going for it is that it's teenagers, right? A lot of times anime is set in high school just so they can be more relatable for the general demographic that is going to be consuming the media in question. But here, if we were to have like adult focused characters for this entire anime, having something like this would feel so jarring, as if really adults can't handle these kids. I mean, come on, you're supposed to be the mature ones, what are you doing? But having them be kids themselves, they still aren't adults, right? Have to deal with such even more immaturity than themselves. It allows for something that normally would feel eye-rolling actually to feel worthwhile to be an arc, but also really reflects how they are still immature themselves and need to grow. And if they can overcome this obstacle, maybe they can overcome the more serious obstacles in the future. Because if you're going to want to have to deal with villains and just really severe sequences and consequences and things like that, you have to be able to at least deal with children, right? I mean, that's like the bare minimum bar that you need to cross. That threshold has to be met. Otherwise, you are not fit to be a hero. And you can look at characters like Bako and be like, okay, he's really not ready. I mean, this dude's gonna punch the kids left and right, even if they're crying to help find his mother, right? Bako would just punch the kid in his face. So I am liking how they're giving a test that feels so out of place when you think about it just at surface level, like, what the hell? We're focusing in on kids. This makes no sense, but when you really break it down and see how it's functioning in this episode, it flexes how there was never any other test that they could deal with, and in doing so, it's creating actually one of the more memorable training slash test sequences that this anime has seen to date, and I don't know how long it's going to last, but man, honestly, they could give me a few episodes worth of this, and I think there's enough ways that you could probably mix and match the cast and just ideas to what they're doing here, and they could probably make something pretty compelling for multiple weeks. Maybe not 6 weeks, but definitely a few more for sure. I'm loving this for sure. I mean, it's just, I didn't know I wanted to see this, but I'm so happy they delivered it. But what did everyone think? Either for manga readers, anime originals like myself, what did you think of the episode in terms of its very unique direction? Favorite moment, least favorite moment? Whatever you're feeling, do let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.